What up guys, it's Dragon Ball for Life here today and I'm back with another video. Now I'm on part 3 on my full complete guide. The last part I actually touched upon quite a bit of other stuff. I was trying to think of if there was anything that I forgot. Like I said, I'm doing this all continuously at once. So if there's any bonus ones, I will be doing that in the future. For right now, I just want to get these ones out. And the important thing that I want to talk about in this video is the two different universes. So like, let's say you're using a battle where you're saying this character versus another character, and especially if they're really powerful characters. Now you needed to take into consideration, and a lot of people don't, is the separate universes they're from, the laws and the rules that work in those universes are going to be different than the other ones. And this is very important because a lot of people say, well, this character was able to do this and that in their universe, so that means that it's the same, or this character struggled with this and that. And it's like, well, it might be the case, but you also need to take in consideration that these universes operate on different rules on how they work and operate. Some fictional universes that are written by writers, some of them are more scientifically accurate, whereas others are more, science fiction based. And some of them might have, take certain amount of stuff from science, but they take it from different parts. Because when it comes to fiction, the thing about it is these writers want to write these creative and imaginative stories, and you can be very imaginative of your very, realistic. And some writers do more realistic, powerful characters, but usually those characters are weaker. But still, it depends on the laws of their universe and how they operate. And like I said, even if they're both super science fiction like, it will also, they take different stuff from science. So depending on the writer, some writers will be like, well, science says this and it would be true, but other ones say this scientifically is true, but then they have the opposite ones that they disagree with. And this is important. Let me give you a couple of examples of what I mean. Now, usually people talk about like, well, characters that can create life are more powerful than characters that can destroy. So if a character can destroy a planet, it's not as impressive as a character who can, create a planet. Or a character that can kill a bunch of people is not as powerful, as impressive as a character who can, create life in general, like humans and stuff. Now, when you look at, for example, DC, when all the power rings combined into one and created the White Lantern ring, the White Lantern ring gave Hal Jordan and these other guys the ability to resurrect people and planets and stuff like that. So you can create things, and usually the higher end characters in DC and Marvel have the ability to create. You can have high end characters that can destroy, but usually if you have a character that can create, that puts them in the high upper echelon. These normal regular characters cannot just create life using their powers in general. And people say, well, that's the case, then that's how it works. But when you look at Dragon Ball, that's not how it works, because you have people like the Supreme Kais who are the gods of creation, and they're known for creating planets, stars, solar systems, and even life. They're able to create things out of thin air. We saw with Kibito Kai being able to create Kachin metal out of thin air, so you can do that. But Beerus and the other gods of destruction, they cannot create, they can only destroy. That's all their purpose is. But even though they can only destroy, they're far more powerful than the Supreme Kais. So that's important to take into consideration. Even though they're gods of creation that could create life, mortal beings or celestial objects, even though they have that power, gods of destruction can only destroy. The gods of destruction are stronger naturally, right? But by Marvel and DC's logic, the gods of creation should be stronger than him because all he can do is destroy life. But there's characters that aren't even gods of destruction and are more powerful than them. Goku and Vegeta, even before that in the Buu Saga, was stronger than Supreme Kai, and Supreme Kai can create life. So how are they stronger than him? Well, the laws are not the same. Just because in Marvel and DC and in comics, the ability to create life is more impressive than destruction, that doesn't mean in other universes like in Dragon Ball that that's the case. Because if that was the case, then Supreme Kais would be the most powerful deities. Or one of the most powerful, because Whis can also do the same thing. I guess you can argue, well, Whis can do it, he creates life, but like I said, you don't necessarily just being creating life makes you that strong. Also, some people are like, well, this character can't move, is not this fast or move at speed light or whatever, because they can't travel through time. And they say this usually for Dragon Ball characters, like, oh, well, Dragon Ball characters are not that fast, they're not fast in light and stuff like that because they don't go through time or whatever. But if you think about it logically and you look at the universes, you'll see it doesn't make too much. That doesn't really make sense, that comparison. For example, in DC, for the Flash to go through time, all he has to do is go faster than the speed of light. They never stated an insane amount faster, just a little bit faster than the speed of light. And the way he does this is he vibrates his molecules at that speed, faster than the speed of light. And as he's running, he's vibrating his molecules at the same time, and that creates a rift through the dimensions where he runs through and gets into another universe because of it, right? Or it goes through time because of it. Whereas Goku and the Dragon Ball characters, even though they've gone faster than the speed of light, have never traveled through time. The only ways they, manipulate time is either through a technique or a time machine. And some people say, well, they're not that fast. But if you look at somebody like Whis, he's gone insanely faster than what Flash has. And I'm not saying Flash in general, I'm saying when he's traveled to time. Flash has gone considerably slower than the speed that Whis has gone at to just travel through time. Whis, we've seen him travel throughout the entire universe with less than 3 hours, which would be quadrillions or, quintillion times faster than the speed of light, which that would be way more than enough to move through time, right? But he's never been able to move through time. Why? Because that's not how it works. In Dragon Ball, you can't travel through time just through speed alone. It's never been shown or we've seen that characters can travel through time with just speed in general. So it's the most logical explanation is in Dragon Ball that's not how it works. Just because somebody moves super fast does not mean that they can move through time, right? Another thing to take into consideration is, like I said, they can move through time, but also how the time works there. Because the laws of time through Marvel and DC is if you go back in time, it changes the future itself, like in Terminator and stuff like that. But when it comes to Dragon Ball, when you mess with time or go back in time, it does not affect that timeline at all. What it does is it creates another branch in the timeline, and it creates a separate one. So it only affects the one that you've gone to. So when Trunks wanted to go to the past to, give Goku the medicine for the heart virus to stop, the androids, it didn't change his future. It did change theirs, but it didn't change his future because going through time creates alternate timelines. And this is something I talked about quite a bit because people mentioned, oh, this character can go back in time and kill them, or this character can do that and go kill them. And people use this especially for the Goku Black versus Reverse Flash, videos, Death Battle video and stuff. And my argument and my statement was that's not how their time works. In DC, you can go back in time and change affect the future. Whereas in Dragon Ball, going back in the past is going to only affect that timeline. It will create a separate timeline, and the one you came from will still be there. So, if somebody like Reverse Flash ran back in time to try to kill, Zamasu before he made that wish, he could, but that universe Zamasu would be dead. If he comes back to this place, guess what? He's going to be back against the same Zamasu. He's not going to be affected. He's like, what the hell? Why didn't it affect you? Well, because you killed a separate one. When you went back in time, it created a separate one. Also, you don't know if he can go through that because DC, like I said, you're just going back in that one linear time and you're messing it up and then you're changing it. Whereas this one, you're not going back in that timeline. You're going back and you have to create a separate timeline altogether that is a parallel timeline that's branched out into multiple different ones. So it's a little more complex to go to that one. Also, the structural integrity of the universe and how it works. And then for what I mean by that is basically we have certain characters that have items or abilities or whatever that can mess with their universe or reality and even destroy other realities there. And the argument is well, this character has this much power to destroy realities, and it's well, is that energy that they're getting or the power they're getting connected to that universe in one way or another? Because if it is, then that effect will only work on that universe. And let me get into explaining that. When it comes to, the Flash character stealing speed or de-aging somebody like with Reverse Flash, that would not work on a character from Dragon Ball. Why would it not work? Because from what it was explained on how it worked, and I explained in my video, but I'll go on to it again in this one, where I explained that, the way it works is when he steals speed or steals the aging, it's because the speed steal techniques are connected to the speed force. So basically what is described is when you steal speed, we're stealing the speed force from inanimate objects and people, because everyone and everything is connected to the speed force. Now Hunter Zolman, since he messed with the cosmic treadmill, he got hit with time energy, and that time energy basically displaced him out of time itself, and he was using his power directly from time and not the speed force. So he was connected to the speed force, but once when he got hit with the time energy, his body was connected to time itself not the Speed Force, which is kind of intertwined with time itself. But he was directly linked to only time itself. So they couldn't use speed steal or de-aging on Hunter Zolman because he was outside. He was using, he was connected to time itself, not to the Speed Force. But everybody else could work on them. Now this doesn't work on other characters outside of DC because the Speed Force is a cosmic energy only present in DC. It's not present in Marvel. It's not present in Dragon Ball. So for them to steal speed, remember, it's connected to all people and inanimate objects in DC. So you can't steal Goku Black's, age or speed, like for Reverse Flash once again, because that was the perfect scenario for it. Where they're saying that, and my argument was, well, those techniques have literally been stated that the way it works is the fact that everybody in that universe is connected to the Speed Force, and even inanimate objects are also connected to the Speed Force because it has a direct link to the time itself, and that this technique steals the Speed Force from those things and then it adds on to him, so it slows them down. But Dragon Ball characters and other characters outside DC are not connected to the Speed Force. They don't exist in their universe. They're not present. That's not part of their universe's cosmology, so that wouldn't work. Same thing when it came to the Silver versus Trunks video. And somebody disagreed with me. I want to touch upon that a little bit. He was stating, well, you're going to say that they should take away, his Chaos Emeralds, but that's like taking away, the Flash's Speed Force. That's where his power comes from. No. First of all, I know this doesn't have a fully to do with this, but I just feel like I had to talk about this or touch upon this because that is not the same thing. The Speed Force is actually a part of Barry's power set. It's not an item that he has or a cosmic thing that he has. It's just his power set. So when he uses the Speed Force, it's directly connected to him. And when I mentioned that the Speed Force, those techniques don't work against characters outside of it, it's because those techniques are directly linked to Speed Force itself. They work with the other person also having Speed Force, which it doesn't work outside of that. So that's different. Also, and Silver and these other characters, they're using Chaos Emeralds, which is not a part of them. These Chaos Emeralds are objects that are outside of them. It's like saying Thanos and the Infinity Gauntlet is the same. No, that's not his power. These are objects that anybody else, well, not anybody else, but most other people in the Marvel Universe can use. It's not his power. These are items that help boost up his power. It's just that he's associated with it. Same thing with the Chaos Emeralds. Other characters can use the Chaos Emeralds. None of them own it. It's just anybody who gets it. And the best way they can work with it is if they have Chaos Control, which is different. But the reason why I'm focusing on this is because he was saying, oh, you're trying to take away his main power and stuff. And I wasn't saying that. My argument was, and this wasn't saying to discredit completely, my argument and me throwing a little monkey's wrench into the statement that he could win because he can manipulate reality was, well, was he manipulating reality when he used the Chaos Energy because the energy that it was giving him was so powerful that it put his power to the level where you have reality warping and negate reality warping on top of that? Or was this because the energy that was, that they're using was connected directly to the universe? Because it was stated in the Archie comics that the Chaos Emeralds are connected to the Sonic, multiverse. So the energy is derived from the multiverse. So whoever owns or controls the Chaos Emeralds with the Chaos Control basically controls the multiverse because you can use this to warp that. But that does not mean you can warp Dragon Ball or DC because their cosmology and their structure is not the same, and you need to take into consideration the science that is placed into it. So the Chaos Emeralds and Sonic's multiverse are directly linked together. Whoever controls that that world. That's why there was reality warping effects, and that's why Mega Man and Sonic didn't get affected because they had that energy within them and they were able to control it. Now, when it comes to Dragon Ball characters, or when it comes to characters from DC or Marvel, that energy is not directly linked to their universe. So let's say he can go to their universe. He's not going to be able to wipe it out. Just like with Thanos using the Infinity Gauntlet, it depends on which universe, because that energy is connected to that set universe. The only difference is in Archie Sonic one, it's connected to his multiverse and additional multiverses that are owned by the same publishing company. But DC and Dragon Ball and Marvel are not owned by a publishing company. So this energy that they will have will not work. Now, unless that energy still gets contained within their body, and they might not be able to, affect those realities by warping it, but still have that attack power, then still you would have an argument there. But still, take into consideration that. So this is a very complex situation. I would say the best way to do this when you're doing combat scenarios is to realize the different characters you're using and the universes they're from, and realize that just because one rule works in another universe doesn't mean it's going to work in the other universe. Both these universes have different rules and different set ways that those cosmic laws work. So just be like I said, for example, Dragon Ball, time does not work the same in Marvel and DC. Marvel and DC, you can affect time there and it affects the future. It won't do that for Dragon Ball. You can go through time by just going faster than the speed of light and vibrating your molecules. But in Dragon Ball, characters have gone way faster than that. Whis has gone way faster than that, and no character has been able to affect time without technique, an ability, or just a time machine. So there's also that, and then the creation stuff. You can have a character that can create life, and that might be a top powerful character in that universe. But in other characters, in other universes like Dragon Ball, just because a character can create life doesn't mean that they're a top level character in that universe, So there's a lot of other stuff. Maybe I can have a little more in-depth conversation about that, but I think this is good enough. If you guys have anything interesting to talk about in that case, I would love to talk with you guys in the comment section. I know you guys might disagree with me on this point, but like I said, it's necessary to take, because I feel like a lot of versus channels, especially Death Battle, don't take these into consideration, and this is a big disservice when it comes to doing these topics. Because if you're going to argue who's going to win these fights, characters in these fights, you have to take into consideration that the universes and their rules that they accept are different. Because each fictional writer might take some aspects from actual science and incorporate it in their writing. Some might not take it, others. For example, in Marvel and DC, even though they're very science fiction, they are still trying to connect more to realistic science. Whereas in anime, especially Dragon Ball, not all anime, but most anime, especially Dragon Ball, the writers don't care too much about science, so it's more nonsensical. Dragon Ball is less scientifically and realistically accurate, whereas Marvel and DC, even though they're ridiculous, are far more scientifically and realistically accurate than Dragon Ball would be. So you need to take those two things also into consideration. But yeah, this is quite a complex topic. I think people need to understand that this discussion between or about these what's the thing called, these different things are very in depth, like who would win in a fight. It might sound simple on paper, but if you're having characters that close, there's many things that you have to take into consideration, and very in depth stuff that you have to look through. Also, there's quite a bit of disagreement between fans. If it wasn't this complex, there wouldn't be such a discourse or disagreement between all people across the board. So yeah, that's it for this video. I might add on additional videos to this one. There is maybe I think something else that I want to add, but for right now, my neighbors are being annoying as fuck with their mechanical bullshit work. So sorry if you hear that all. I know it's kind of a little weird, but yeah, that's it for this video. One other thing I'll make is, since today they have that, tomorrow I'll just make a small little video basically going through all the stuff that we talked about, not in depth, but just like listing all the stuff, like, oh, I put strength, speed, durability, stamina, precision. I want to put that all because that will be the perfect list to look at for a guide. So if any of you guys are going to do a versus videos or a channel, please take these videos into consideration as like kind of a library of sort, where you can look at and be like, oh, this is how I can accurately do it. And I'm not saying this to be arrogant, I just feel like this is the problems that I see with other people when they make it. And if there's additional stuff that I missed, feel free to mention in the comment section that, hey, you left this out, or I would put this also into it, because I think this topic is very interesting, because I think if we have a perfect format for a versus battle, it'll make these versus battles a lot more complex. It will require a lot more research and more brain power to do it, but it will also make it more accurate and fair, to the point where even people who might not like the outcome, they will have to at least more likely agree with what the outcome is. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed, and stay tuned for next time.